Today is around February 25th. I'm going to be planting tomatoes out here in the high tunnel today. I got two types of tomatoes here, and I just brought these as an examples. This tomato here is about the height I like. It has a nice, smaller size, compact on here. Both of these tomatoes were planted in the middle of January to end of January time frame. This tomato, it's growing a little bit, it's stretched out. So you may have some of these that stretch out like this too. Now I don't try to get them like this, but in my setup I only have so much light and cold area so I can keep them small like this. The way I keep them smaller like this is once they've germinated and grown to a couple of inches, 3 or 4 inches, then if you put them in where they can have sufficient light and it's cold temperature, say 65 degrees, 55 degrees, right, in that cold area, they will not grow as much, so they'll stay more compact like this. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to plant these. Now this is a disadvantage, having it this high, but I'm going to show you how to turn this disadvantage into an advantage. I'm going to dig a hole. So if you look down here by the shovel, I'm going to dig a hole. I'm going to make the hole deep enough that I can put this plant in here, and I'm going to have to coil the stalk a little bit, and I'm going to plant it right up to the tip. I'm only going to have just a little bit of the tip sticking out. Now what that's going to do when I plant it this deep, everything below my fingers is going to produce roots. So it's still February, the end of February. It's still cold out here, lots of snow outside. I'm going to use a well of water to protect it so it doesn't freeze, but in the cold air, it's not going to grow very much, but those roots are still going to develop. And so I'm going to have, if I do this correctly, then I'll have a massive root system down below that is able to help support the growth up above my fingers once it warms up enough and the plant can take off. So these 4x8 cells that I have, I can plant 4 tomato plants in here. So I come in here and I space them out. They're roughly 2 feet apart. So I get my initial holes. When I come in, I just make this as deep as I can here. Here you going. So if you can see at the top of you can see how deep the top of my shovel is. It's just a little bit below the top of my shovel. This is as deep as I need to go for these particular plants. Now I like to put some water in the bottom of the hole. I just don't like the roots to have any dry bare spots in there as I hit it. So I fill that hole up, with a generous amount. In my case, I filled up till it's almost full like that, and then I'm going to let it sink down a little bit. Okay, these, like I said, I'm going to show you how to do these taller tomatoes. Now when I'm growing them, they're typically growing in as a group, so they help support each other, or I can use little bamboo stalks and help keep them together. Be careful is if you do accidentally grow these long, and like I said, I don't try to do this, it's just with my setup, that's how it occurs. So some plants I get long and I have to deal with it, and this is how I deal with it. So I've got a nice set of root hairs down here at the root development, down here at the bottom. You can see my hole's filled full of water. I've let them kind of go out. Now I take this, I'm just not going to plant it in there straight like this. I'm going to turn it on its side. So I'm going to turn it on its side, and if you get close here and watch what I'm doing here, you can see how I kind of twist that around in there. I leave the leaves on. I gently put the dirt back in. I don't want to break the stem because the stem's long and it can easily break. So I hold that in there. Now what I've done, and I've done this for decades now, year after year. If I could keep them all short and stocky, I would, but I can't. And so you may have that same problem, but But I do that, I just leave a little bit of the top growing out on here, and remember, it has all that stem down below that's going to turn into roots. Roots will start coming out of that stem, and I'll have a really nice developed root system, so that when it does warm up and the plant can take off, it has the root system to support the growth, and then these will grow really fast. Let me show you something here really quick. See these? It's already started to blossom. Now, typically tomato plants, the fruit won't set on here unless the plant unless the temperature is about 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So those are not going to fruit on there, but they'll still, so I don't really need these on here. And another little thing about down here, these are indeterminate tomatoes, and I'm going to show you a little bit more how to treat indeterminate tomatoes, but I only want this one center stalk growing up with tomatoes coming off of that. So I don't need these side shoots. So I'm just going to take my finger and just pinch that off on here. And I really don't want the plant putting energy into the blossoms now, so I'm going to just take that off. These leaves here may or may not die, but that's it. Then I come over here, I take my whale of water. I take this, now there's a little bit of a trick to doing this too, but if I kind of hold this on one side, then I can let that expand and I can put that over the plant. Otherwise, sometimes you pick it up and it may break the plant as you're putting it on. So there you go. Okay, I planted the tomatoes. I have 9 cells worth of tomatoes planted. This first cell here, you can see the 4 whales of water and how they look once this is finally planted and set up so that they'll be able to survive the cold on here. But here's walking down this row. Here's some of the tomatoes here. The ones that already have the whale of water on it, that's sun gold. That's a golden cherry, that is cherry tomato that is very sweet. This next row right here is the Sucra cherry. This is a real beautiful cherry tomato. This next one, these are Martha Washington, just a slicing tomato. This next set, this is Copia. This is a plant that I get from tomato growers, but this is a beautiful tomato. This is actually one of the sexiest tomatoes there are. This is an orange, yellowish type tomato, striped tomato that just looks really sexy and is very, very good tasting. This next row, these are big beef tomatoes. This is kind of a big slicer. This next tomato here is German Johnson. This is also a very sexy looking tomato on there, just kind of a yellowish, orangish tomato that tastes really good. This is an heirloom variety. The stuff you see planted next to it, this is, as an example, is how I was trying to show you earlier, how I do plant stuff off to the side, each side of these tomatoes. This is Clatonia on here. These are volunteer seeds that I've dug up and just replanted in here. This is used in salads. We do a blend of different types, up to say 14 to 21 different types of greens and lettuces to just make some very, very tasty salads. This next one is Marabone, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is the second year of planting it. I get these from Johnny Seeds. I have not had that much success with them, but I still keep trying to do it on here. You'll notice this one, I only have 3 plants in that cell. That's because not all of my seeds germinated. Out of the 6 seeds that I planted, only half of them germinated. And so I'm either going to have to plant another seed in that area, or take one of the cuttings as these gets bigger and clone it and put it into that 4th spot. This is Estiva. This is just another medium-sized tomato. This one is this down here, the last one, the 9th cell that I planted is Beausoleil. I'm pronouncing that right again. It's a nice tomato, does well in the high tunnels here. I've planted this one for several years. But the reason I plant so many different types of tomatoes is probably the number one reason is I'm a sucker for tomato plants in catalogs. I get a catalog, I see all these different tomato plants, and I go, wow, I want to try that one, I want to try that one. So as a result, I got probably about 50 different tomatoes that I'll try. And out of those tomatoes, I see which ones grow the best. When you grow that many tomatoes and you're able to put them side by side and taste them, you can see a nice variety of taste in the tomatoes. There are tomatoes that have low acidity. Sometimes your colored tomatoes are like that, more your orange and yellowish tomatoes. So a person who doesn't like the taste of tomatoes, probably the number one reason they don't like them is because they're buying them mass produced from stores, and they have synthetic chemicals and whatnot that are used to produce them. It's not a homegrown tomato. And any of you who have ever tried a homegrown tomato versus a commercial grown tomato, you'll know exactly what I mean, the taste difference between those two. But one of it is probably because of the taste in the store that they don't like them. The other is just that high acidity in, say, a reddish tomato. So if they can try different types of tomatoes together and see the different flavors, then a person who doesn't like tomatoes, once they can try some of these different varieties, they'll find one that they like and be able to eat it. So I like to grow these different ones. I find out which ones grow best for me in my area, and then I try to grow that type of tomato. The problem I run up against is by the time I find breeds that I like Clermont tomato was just a really good tomato that did well in this high tunnel. They stopped making it. They went on to a different type and had different substitutions. And when they say, when they use the word, substitution in a catalog, or this replaces it, it usually means we're not going to sell the one you wanted, but here's the one we're trying to get you to buy now instead of the one you wanted. Okay, just a final note. I've got my well of waters on top of the... Let me head outside here, and I just so you can see, I just want to show you how much snow there still really is out here. But this is looking out here outside the high tunnel. You can see that it's still snowy. There's still lots of snow. There's absolutely no way I could even dig down and get to the snow, get to the dirt out here. But with these high tunnels, you're able to start planting stuff early inside of these. So these just are really, really nice things to have on there. And once again, thank you for watching.